The city was a symphony of distant sirens and muffled murmurs as I trudged through the urban labyrinth, the glow of streetlights painting fractured patterns on the rain-soaked pavement. The air clung to me like a shroud, heavy with the weight of untold stories. It was in these anonymous alleyways that I stumbled upon the fragments of Chantel's shattered world. The news arrived like a ghostly whisper. Chantel, my friend of 34, clad in the vulnerability of her 25 years, was teetering on the precipice of despair. Her life, a fragile tapestry, had unraveled, each thread exposing a raw edge of hardship. Pregnant and alone, she stood at the intersection of adversity and the indifferent gaze of a city that seldom acknowledged its casualties. Chantel's predicament unfolded like a tragic novella, a tale written in eviction notices and stained with the ink of unpaid rent. The local council, draped in bureaucratic apathy, had turned its back, blaming her for the arrears as though the circumstances leading to her financial abyss were but a mere inconvenience to be dismissed. Her haunting eyes mirrored a plea for salvation as she recounted the impending storm that threatened to engulf her. The specter of homelessness loomed large, its icy fingers tightening around her fragile hopes. I felt the weight of her words settle like a stone in the pit of my stomach, a silent oath binding me to her unspoken plea. I had found myself nestled in the cocoon of a newfound love. Evelyn, 31, an enigmatic translator who wove languages into tapestries of meaning. In her flat, we forged the contours of our shared existence, a space where pasts and presents converged. Yet the sanctuary we inhabited seemed distant and inconsequential in the face of Chantel's silent suffering. As I traversed the rain-soaked streets, I couldn't escape the haunting image of Chantel, a lone figure against the backdrop of indifferent skyscrapers. Her vulnerability echoed in the rhythmic patter of raindrops, each one a poignant reminder of the tears unshed. The city, in its cold, unyielding embrace, seemed oblivious to the unfolding drama. Chantel, an unwritten chapter in its ceaseless narrative. I carried her story like a clandestine burden, the weight of her world pressing against my conscience. And so, in the obsidian depths of that night, the city became the backdrop for a moral reckoning, an obligation to salvage a sliver of humanity in a concrete jungle indifferent to the anguish of its denizens. Chantel's plea echoed in the recesses of my mind, a haunting melody that demanded an answer. As dawn painted the cityscape in hues of muted optimism, I stood at the threshold of a decision. Chantel's fate intertwined with mine, an unforeseen chapter in the story of my urban existence. The city awaited its protagonists, and within the shadows of sorrow, a choice hung in the balance, a choice that would shape the destiny of more than one life. The moon hung low in the ink-stained sky, casting ethereal shadows on the city streets as I stood before Evelyn, the woman whose gaze held the power to reshape the fate of my pregnant friend, Chantel. The air was charged with an unspoken tension, a pulsating energy that whispered of decisions and consequences. "Evelyn," I began, my voice steady, though I could feel the rapid tempo of my heart betraying my calm facade. "Chantel's got nowhere to go. She's being evicted, pregnant, and alone. We can't just turn our backs on her." Evelyn, ensconced in the fortress of her flat, met my plea with an arched eyebrow and an unyielding gaze. Her eyes, usually a soft hazel, now bore the hardness of stone. "I get it. You need your space, your home office. But Evelyn, this is about more than just that room. This is about humanity, about helping someone in need. Chantel's carrying a life inside her, and she's desperate," I implored, laying bare the urgency of the situation. Evelyn's response came not in words, but in a dismissive wave of her hand, as if swatting away an inconsequential nuisance. I don't know her, and I have my reasons for keeping my space just that. Mine. I took a breath, steadying myself against the surge of frustration threatening to spill forth. "Look, I know you're attached to your office, but Chantel doesn't need much. She just needs a place to stay until she gets back on her feet. I've known her for years, and she's not asking for a handout. She's asking for a chance." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her lips pursed in thinly veiled annoyance. "A chance? I've worked hard for what I have, and I won't have some pregnant stranger waltzing in and taking it away." I sensed the walls closing in, the palpable tension thickening the air. Desperation crept into my voice as I sought a compromise. "We have a spare bedroom. Chantel can stay there, and you won't even notice. I'll make sure she doesn't disturb your precious office space. Please, Evelyn, Reconsider. She stood unmoved, a fortress of indifference. I've made my decision. This discussion is over. I retreated, defeated, leaving her with the echo of my unanswered plea. As I closed the door behind me, I couldn't shake the weight of the unspoken words lingering in the air, a rift widening between us, the contours of which I had yet to fully comprehend. Chantel's future, and the delicate balance of my relationship with Evelyn, hung in the balance. The air in the flat hung heavy with unspoken words, and the tension between Evelyn and me crackled like an impending storm. I stood in the doorway of our living room, eyeing the locked door to Evelyn's sacred sanctuary, the home office. The walls seemed to close in, and the scent of brewing conflict suffused the room. Ev, you can't just lock yourself in there. We need to talk about this, I pleaded, my voice carrying the weight of frustration and concern. Behind that locked door, Evelyn's muffled voice cut through the silence like a dagger. I've already given you my answer. I'm not sacrificing my office for someone who wouldn't even pay rent. I ran a hand through my hair, exasperation mingling with desperation. Chantel's predicament echoed in my mind, and the urgency of the situation clashed with Evelyn's unwavering stance. I knocked gently on the door, hoping to break through the barrier she'd erected. Ev, please. Chantel is pregnant and has nowhere else to go. We can figure this out together, I implored, my words bouncing off the walls of the narrow hallway. The door flung open, revealing Evelyn's stern expression. Her eyes, usually warm and understanding, now glinted with defiance. You're being naive, thinking we can just figure this out. This is my space, my work, and I won't compromise. I took a step back, frustration bubbling into anger. This isn't just about your damn office, Evelyn. It's about helping someone in need, about basic human decency. Evelyn scoffed, her arms crossed defensively. Basic human decency? I'm not running a charity here. And don't act like you're some saint swooping in to save the day. Chantel wouldn't even pay her rent. My jaw clenched, and I fought to keep my voice steady. She's pregnant, for God's sake. You can't turn your back on someone in her situation. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. And you can't make decisions about our home without considering my feelings. This isn't just your place, it's ours. I took a deep breath, attempting to rein in the rising tide of frustration. I'm not trying to dictate everything. I just thought you, of all people, would understand compassion. Evelyn's gaze remained unwavering. Compassion doesn't pay the bills. If she stays here, who's going to cover the rent she can't? The room felt like a pressure cooker, each word exchanged escalating the conflict. I wanted to shake Evelyn, make her see the gravity of the situation, but I knew that wouldn't help. You're being unreasonable, I muttered under my breath, pacing the small expanse of the living room. Evelyn's retort came quick and cutting. Unreasonable? I think it's unreasonable for you to expect me to give up my workspace for your pregnant friend. A silence settled between us, heavy with the weight of unspoken grievances. Evelyn retreated back into her office, slamming the door shut. I stood there, a tempest of emotions swirling inside me. As I left the flat, the door clicked shut behind me, leaving me in the hallway with the echoes of our clash still ringing in my ears. I felt a mix of anger, disappointment, and an unsettling realization that this conflict had the potential to redefine the boundaries of my relationships. Chantel's desperation mirrored my own, and the storm that had been looming had finally broken, leaving me standing in its aftermath, unsure of how to navigate the aftermath. My head spun with the weight of doubt, a tempest of conflicting emotions churning within. The echo of my friends' voices lingered in the air, each syllable carving into the recesses of my consciousness. The whispers of concern about Evelyn and the speculative murmurs about the unborn child danced a precarious waltz, threatening to pull me into a vortex of self-doubt. As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows crept into the corners of our shared space, mirroring the shadows that now clouded my relationships. I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the worn furniture. The room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground where allegiances were tested and loyalty questioned. I replayed the scenes in my mind like a worn-out film reel, each frame etching deeper doubts into my conscience. Friends, who were supposed pillars of support, had become architects of skepticism. Their words, like poisoned arrows, found their mark, leaving wounds that festered with uncertainty. The speculation about the baby's parentage, an unspoken accusation hanging in the air, clawed at my insides. Was it their business to pry into the intimate details of my life? I grappled with the revelation that my altruism was scrutinized under the harsh light of suspicion. The joyous news of impending parenthood had mutated into a grotesque spectacle, a macabre carnival of conjecture. A cold breeze swept through the open window, carrying with it the scent of the city's secrets and regrets. In the silence, I could almost hear the creaking floorboards of our shaky foundation. The very fabric of our relationships, woven with threads of trust and camaraderie, threatened to unravel. My gaze drifted to the framed photograph on the wall, a frozen moment of laughter, joy, and shared dreams. How had we arrived at this crossroads where the warmth of companionship had been replaced by the frost of doubt? The faces in the photograph stared back, frozen smiles mocking the tumultuous reality that now surrounded us. The weight of my actions pressed upon me like a heavy cloak, suffocating and oppressive. Was I blinded by my desire to do right by Chantel, sacrificing the harmony I once cherished? The boundaries between friend, lover, and confidant blurred, leaving me stranded in a no-man's land of introspection. As the night deepened, I found myself standing in front of the closed door to Evelyn's home office. The barrier symbolized more than just physical space. It embodied the growing chasm between us. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob, a silent plea for understanding echoing in the stillness of the night. In that moment, I questioned not only the relationships around me, but the very core of my convictions. The shadows of doubt danced on the walls, and I was left to navigate the maze of uncertainty, grappling with the consequences of a choice that had spiraled beyond my control. The bitter taste of uncertainty lingered in the air, a metallic hint of regret that clung to every breath. My mind echoed with the chorus of doubt as I found myself standing at the crossroads of conviction and consequence. The incandescent glow of the cityscape outside framed my thoughts in a hazy urban silhouette. Shadows danced on the walls, mimicking the elusive nature of the decisions that led me here. Friends' words echoed in my mind, each syllable a weighted pebble thrown into the pond of my contemplation. As I traced the lines of our shared history, the age gap between Chantel and me emerged like a fault line, threatening the very foundation of our friendship. The disapproving whispers of my peers echoed louder now, questioning the authenticity of our connection. Was it camaraderie or naivety that bridged the chasm of years between us? The uncertainty clawed at the edges of my resolve. The question of parentage, injected like venom into the narrative, slithered through my thoughts. Did it matter whose child Chantel carried? The seed of doubt had been planted, and its roots threatened to strangle the altruistic intentions that had germinated this ill-fated endeavor. I questioned my own motives. Was I championing Chantel's cause, or was I merely seeking redemption for my own perceived shortcomings? In the canvas of my introspection, the image of Evelyn emerged, a formidable figure in the foreground. Her rejection, like a heavy curtain, cast a somber pall over the narrative. Locked away in her office, she worked diligently, oblivious to the storm raging beyond its walls. The division between us, both physical and emotional, became more pronounced with every passing moment. The counsel of my friends reverberated, their words a dissonant melody in the symphony of my thoughts. They spoke of delusion, of an audacious attempt to impose my values upon Evelyn's sanctuary. The fragility of my own relationship with Evelyn loomed large, a precipice threatening to crumble beneath the weight of my misguided altruism. As I grappled with the conflicting currents of loyalty, morality, and the murky waters of interpersonal dynamics, I felt the very fabric of my convictions unraveling. Was I a fool, blinded by the perceived nobility of my intentions, or a mere puppet dancing to the strings of a naive altruism? The chapter closed with the weight of uncertainty settling upon my shoulders. The choices made, the motives questioned, and the consequences looming like storm clouds on the horizon. In the quiet recesses of contemplation, the truth of my character lay bare, awaiting judgment in the court of self-awareness. The city outside my window murmurs with the distant hum of life, but within the walls of my mind, a tempest brews. Friend's voices echo, their words like shards of glass that cut through the fabric of my conviction. I find myself standing at the precipice of self-discovery, teetering between the altruistic facade I wear and the stark reality of my choices. As I sit in the dim glow of our living room, the weight of their skepticism presses upon me. Do I truly embody the caring and compassionate man they proclaim? Or am I, as they suggest, a misguided puppet dancing to the strings of misplaced chivalry? A flickering streetlight casts intermittent shadows on the worn carpet, mirroring the uncertainty that dances within me. Friends' faces, twisted in judgment, replay like a haunting projection on the walls. Their words linger, haunting the spaces between my thoughts, forcing me to confront the inconvenient truth. Perhaps my intentions were not as pure as I believed. My mind retraces the conversation, the criticism like bitter medicine that refuses to be swallowed. Get your own place, they urged, their words echoing in the hollow chambers of my contemplation. The suggestion, like an unfamiliar seed, takes root in the fertile soil of doubt. Could I carve a path independent of Evelyn's flat, detached from the complexities that entwine my relationships? Yet, with every hypothetical scenario they paint, a nagging voice rises, whispering of the impracticality and selfishness inherent in such a move. An old building transformed into a homeless shelter, they say. The idea resonates with a certain noble romanticism, but the execution, fraught with logistical nightmares, threatens to expose the fragility of my grandiose aspirations. As I wrestle with these conflicting thoughts, the walls of our small apartment seem to close in. I recall the warmth of Evelyn's embrace, the shared dreams we wove together, the suggestion to break free from her shelter, to embark on a solitary journey, feels like a betrayal, a seismic shift in the tectonic plates of our relationship. I glance at the clock, its hands ticking away, measuring the passage of time that slips through my fingers like grains of sand. Evelyn remains barricaded in her fortress of work, oblivious to the storm raging in the living room. In the haze of uncertainty, a singular truth emerges. I am a man standing at the crossroads, torn between loyalty and the pursuit of righteousness. The road less traveled beckons, its promises shrouded in mist, but to embark upon it may mean forsaking the warmth of familiarity for the cold embrace of the unknown. The chapter concludes with the decision looming like a storm cloud on the horizon, promising either salvation or ruin, and as the night unfolds, I remain suspended in the delicate balance between the choices that will define me. The evening air hung heavy with the weight of unspoken words as I approached the closed door of Evelyn's home office. My fingers hesitated over the doorknob, each heartbeat echoing in the silence that permeated the flat. The glow of the hallway lamp cast long shadows, foretelling the gravity of the conversation awaiting me on the other side. With a steadying breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door ajar, revealing the dimly lit room cloaked in the soft hum of the computer's cooling fan. Evelyn sat silhouetted against the glow of the screen, her face illuminated by the cold, pale light of the monitor. She didn't look up as I entered, her attention consumed by the digital realm she had barricaded herself within. "Evelyn," I began, the word carrying the weight of the unresolved tension between us. She acknowledged my presence with nothing more than a curt nod, her eyes never leaving the screen. I stepped further into the room, my voice measured but resolute. "I need you to understand the gravity of Chantel's situation. She's not just a friend, she's a pregnant woman on the verge of homelessness. We have the means to help her, and I can't stand by and watch her suffer." Evelyn's fingers paused momentarily on the keyboard, her gaze finally lifting to meet mine. In that moment, I saw a flicker of something, resentment, perhaps, or frustration, but it was quickly masked by a veil of indifference. "You're asking me to give up my workspace, jeopardizing my work for someone who refused to pay their rent?" Her tone was sharp, cutting through the air like a bitter wind. "I won't let that happen, no matter how much you insist." I felt the chasm between us widen, the impassable gap of conflicting priorities. In the dim light, her face remained an enigma, unreadable and distant. The room, once a shared space of intimacy, now harbored the discord of opposing ideals. "You're not just risking your work, Evelyn," I pressed, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You're risking our relationship. I can't stand idly by and watch a pregnant woman suffer while we have the means to help. There has to be some middle ground, some compromise." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw a spark of defiance. "I've made my decision," she declared, her voice unwavering. "This is my final answer. I won't let you disrupt my life for someone who hasn't shown an ounce of responsibility." I felt the weight of her words settle around us, an insurmountable barrier dividing us. It was then that I realized the fragility of the ground upon which relationships tread. The room, once a haven, now echoed with the distant echoes of irreconcilable differences. As I turned to leave the office, the door creaked shut behind me, sealing the fate of our discord. In the hallway, the shadows seemed to dance with the unresolved tension, casting a somber pallor over the flat that had once been a sanctuary. The decision hung in the air, an unspoken verdict on the limits of compassion and the boundaries of love. As I stood at the threshold of the choices I'd made, a tempest of conflicting emotions raged within me. The sterile glow of the city outside Evelyn's window painted an eerie backdrop to the unraveling drama of my own creation. The air in the flat hung heavy with the weight of unspoken words and uncharted territory. Evelyn's office door loomed like an impenetrable fortress. A hesitant hand reached out, and with a fateful knock, I breached the sanctum of solitude she had fortified. The creaking hinges announced my presence, and Evelyn's eyes, a tempest of their own, met mine. Silence clung to the room, pregnant with the unsaid and the uncertain. "Evelyn," I began, my voice an echo in the vastness of our differences. "We need to talk." She peered at me, a queen surveying an insubordinate subject. The air shimmered with tension, laden with the unsaid truths that danced between us. The room, once a haven of shared laughter and whispered confessions, now stood witness to the fracture in our connection. With a deep breath, I tread carefully, the fragile ground beneath my words threatening to give way. "I know this is hard for you, but Chantel is a friend in need. We can't turn our backs on her, especially now." Evelyn's gaze, unyielding, bore into mine. Her response was measured, a fortress of rationality against the onslaught of my emotional plea. "This is my space, our space, and I won't sacrifice it for someone who has shown no regard for what we've built here." A pause lingered, a precipice upon which the fate of our relationship teetered. I grappled with the realization that perhaps my noble intentions had been a veiled intrusion, a forceful reshaping of the world Evelyn had meticulously crafted. "I love you," I confessed, the words hanging in the air like a delicate promise. "But I can't ignore the pain of someone else, someone who needs us. Is it too much to ask for a little compassion?" Evelyn's eyes softened, a chink in the armor of her resolve. Yet the silence that followed spoke louder than any words she could muster. I watched as she retreated into the safety of her thoughts, the chasm between us growing wider with each passing moment. As the standoff persisted, I pondered the fragility of relationships, the intricate dance of compromise and conviction. The city outside, oblivious to our internal strife, continued its rhythmic pulse, a stark contrast to the discord within. With a heavy heart, I conceded defeat, realizing that the tapestry of our shared existence might be irreparably altered. I retreated from Evelyn's fortress, leaving the room in solitude once more. The door closed, an emblem of the unspoken truth that lingered in the hollows of our connection. In the dimly lit living room, shadows whispered tales of decisions made and unmade. The gravity of the moment settled upon me, a poignant reminder that even the noblest intentions could birth unforeseen consequences. The specter of what could have been haunted the space between us, a silent requiem for a relationship reshaped by the echoes of choices that reverberated into the uncertain expanse of the future.